Reader's Digest version of the history of the company is this. The owner of our company is a gentleman by the name of Chen Ni. He came to the United States in the late 80s, early 90s on a flute scholarship. He was a flautist and went to Boston University. And one of the first things that he discovered when he was there is that there was a demand for high quality student model violins, violas, cellos, and double basses. And being the entrepreneur that he would become, he got the idea of, he knew his family back in China was a family of wood carvers. And so together with his father, he would write and say, Dad, I'm not going to do it in Mandarin because I don't speak Mandarin, but he would say, Dad, I need some instruments for my other foreign exchange students that are here studying music. They can't afford the instruments that are here in the United States, but they have to be performance quality, professional quality instruments that they can afford. And so his father sent over a half a dozen violins. He gave them to some of the other student musicians and said, well, what do you think? And they gave them a lot of constructive criticism. And Chen just sat and just took copious notes, sent all of these recommendations back to his father. His father sent back 6 more violins. They improved. They thinned out the bracing. The gradient top they did in a little bit different manner. They moved the tone post to a different spot. And with each time he wrote back to China, they made improvements on those violins. And it got to the point where his father was sending over dozens of guitars, or excuse me, of violins, rather than just 2 and 3 and 4 at a time. So Chin got the bright idea to start going out to local music stores in New England and start selling them out of the back of his trunk, much in the way some of the iconic guitar builders in the United States did. Bob Taylor did the exact same thing with his partner, Kurt Lustig. They just literally drove around and sold these instruments, and that's what Chin did with violins. And one of his customers said, well, do you have to have a brand name for it? What do you call these things? He said, I don't know, it's just my family's violins. And it was one of his customers that came up with the name. He said, well, you're my man from the East. And hence the name Eastman was born. And we sold violins. And from there, it moved into violas and cellos, and eventually double basses. Now, warehousing double basses is not an easy thing. We have 2 40,000 square foot warehouses in Pomona, in Los Angeles area, and that's where we keep our double basses, tubas, and etc. So he started a band and orchestra company, and we now do violins, violas, cellos, double basses. We also do low brass, sousaphones, tubas, etc., trombones. Shire's Trombones. We are the distributor of Shire's Trombones. If anybody knows anything about band and orchestra instruments, it's a very well-known brand. Chen, being a flautist, also acquired and now owns the Haynes Flute Company, which is the most prestigious flute company in the world. And so guitars are just a very small portion of what we do as Eastman. As a matter of fact, we've always kind of been I got to look around the room to make sure I'm not offending anybody. We've always been the redheaded stepchild of Eastman, the guitar division has, because we were the guys that they moved to the other building, because we were just like this little side project that we did. And then all of a sudden we started selling product. And so they took us a little more seriously after that. And but Eastman Music Company is the largest importer of fine student model violins in North America. We import more violins and distribute more violins than any other company in North America. Now, that being said, the natural outgrowth of our company was to start doing other things that required carving. Like I said, Chen's family came from a family of wood carvers. And when we sent those instructions back, the idea started to go, well, what else can we carve? The natural outgrowth of us being an orchestral string company was to start building mandolins and archtop jazz guitars. The very first carved fretted instrument that we built was an archtop guitar. And for the first 4 or 5 years, that's all we did. We did not do any flat tops at all. We only did carved archtop guitars. Everything that we do is hand carved. One of the things that I will say, like I mentioned to you before, we don't build for anybody else. We do not contract our work out to anybody else. The instruments that we make are made the way that instruments were built in the United States in the 1930s, which is considered the golden era of American guitar making. The dovetail joints are hand chiseled. We don't currently own a CNC machine. CNC, by the way, for those of you who are not engineering majors, is a computerized numerical cutter. It's the way most instruments are made in the world. We don't do that. And I'm going to say that with a little bit of hesitation. We don't do it yet. There's going to come a time when we're going to have to, because we are victims of our own popularity. We're a very fast-growing company, and we can't hand carve that stuff forever. There's just not that many wood carvers available to us. Now, the issue is a lot of companies are using CNC machines to make their instruments, but as long as they're hand fitting them and putting them together by hand, that's what we will continue to do. So at present, we are not using any CNC machines. We are not using any type of computerized numerical cutting devices. Everything is made the way the guitars were made by people like Lloyd Loar, Orville Gibson, and the Martin family in the 1930s, which is considered the golden era of American guitar making. And that's what we are now currently doing. That's the way that we build instruments. We are proud to announce that we've just opened a second factory due to the demand of our product. We have about 250 authorized dealers in North America. Maple Street is, we're very, very proud that they've been with us almost since the beginning. So they've seen us go through fits and starts, and we've struggled and stumbled a few times, and we're the first to admit it. Like George said, what we do is we really pride ourselves in listening to the owners of the stores, the luthiers that are repairing stuff, the professional players that are out there playing. And what we really focus on is constantly improving our product line. If somebody tells you that they have a vintage Eastman, be a little leery, because we've learned a lot since then, okay? We've learned a lot. I'm not saying that there's not some great instruments out there. There are. I own a couple of them. But we've only been building fretted instruments for the last 10 years. So we're relative neophytes. We're youngins in this field. So the point I'm making is that we are just in the infancy of what we're going to do. We are dedicated to building some of the finest instruments that can be built by hand. In the grand picture of things, I was telling Claire and George, I've been in the musical instrument industry since '79, but I took a little detour and I was a history teacher for about 10 years. And one of the things that the owner of the company and I got into a lengthy discussion about is, what is our role? Where do we fit in the pantheon of guitar building? Because you've got guys like Orville Gibson, or you've got guys like Lloyd Loar, and then the current guy that's innovating is a guy like Bob Taylor or Bill Collings or something like that. Where do we fit in there? And we really truly believe that we have a rightful place in the pantheon of guitar building, because one of the analogies that I like to use, and George has been in the business for a while, and I don't see this brand here, but there's a brand called Takamine, and in the 1970s, Takamine did something that pretty much took the guitar world and stood it on its head. They were one of the first Japanese manufacturers to start building incredible instruments that were causing people to say, hey, wait a minute, they make really nice guitars in Japan. And Takamine was building these dead-on copies of Martins, and they actually got in a little bit of trouble over the whole thing, but because they were so good. And one of the things that we like to do is we like to pride ourselves in being one of the first companies that people looked at and said, it doesn't matter where they're being built, as long as they're being built right.